This episode is sponsored by Blinkist.
We've been writing a book for the last 12 months, and as a sneak peek, one of the things we've got in there is we created our own value of learning formula. So the formula goes that the value of learning equals the quality of the content divided by the time you invest in it to the power of selection, so what you select to learn. With something like Blinkist, the quality of the content is obviously there because you're getting the best of the best stuff. The time invested is phenomenally low because in 15 minutes or less, you can get the best bits from the best books. And if you take that to the exponent of the power of selection, then Blinkist is also a winner as well. You can sample a whole bunch of different books in 15 minutes or less. You pick the best ones and you're selecting for the best possible things that you can learn.
Yes, it's quite geeky of us, but we'll take it, mate. Because really, Blinkist is for anyone who cares about learning, who doesn't have a lot of time. Blinkist takes the key ideas and insights for over 4,000 non-fiction bestsellers right now and counting, over 27 different categories, and puts them together in 15-minute text and audio explainers that help you understand more about the core ideas. So it's something we both really enjoy and highly recommend.
Some of their winners, some of their most popular books that they've got in Blinks, episodes we've done, like Everything is Effed. Is that what we say? Everything is Effed?
It's all fucked.
By Mark Manson, things like Sapiens, and also some books that we haven't done yet, but are probably coming just around the corner. Why We Sleep, The Courage to Be Disliked, Becoming by Michelle Obama. These are all things that you can check out on Blinkist.
So right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. Go to blinkist.com/whatyouwilllearn to start your free 7-day trial and get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled blinkist.com/whatyouwilllearn to get 25% off and a free 7-day trial.
Welcome back to What You Will Learn. My name is Adam Ashton.
And my name is Adam Jones. And today we're taking you through the best bits of Season 5 so far, 2020.
2020, the best of 2020.
You, cheers.
Oh, yeah, cheers. Oh, we got the celebratory clink. We probably left this a little late in the evening to start recording. We're already, the burger has been had, the traditional dirty burger has been had.
We've had a few drinks. We've also had the traditional argument about something.
The traditional big fight offline. It's definitely an annual tradition. The 2016, the best of 2016, that was back in Bali. We were in that hostel room after... I just remember one story which probably doesn't get on the air this early in the episode about the other bloke who was staying in the room with us.
Is that me?
But that was, no, the other bloke who was on the opposite bunk. But that was 2016. 2017.
Jesus, I don't even remember that. Keep going. We'll talk about it later.
Offline, I'll tell you later.
We'll bring it to the end of the episode. There's a bit of mystery for people hanging around.
Stay till the end. 2017, that was when we got absolutely sloshed. I was going to work the next day. I got an Uber with you to a bar. And as soon as we got there, I got an Uber straight back home because I couldn't handle it and then munted on the way home.
Well, I think I was single at the time and I was waiting in line just speaking to some randoms. I got to the front of the line, hang on, where's Ashto? You were gone.
The Uber got there, dropped you off, and I said, mate, I'm out. I'm going straight back home. So it was an hour and a half journey, 45 minutes there, 45 minutes back, and it was messy the next day. What was 2018? What have we said? Our Johnny Walkers gradually got worse. We started with the top shelf blue and we gradually made our way back through gold, black, and then red. And then I guess that brings us to now, 2020. It's been an absolutely wild year, I guess, for us and for everybody.
It certainly has. And I think we're very lucky this year in a sense that we had a bit of COVID because we had that book we launched at the start of, we started writing at the start of the year. And in January, I went to Lombok, Indonesia. You hung around here and we both worked really hard on it and we thought we were pretty much done.
We were 95% done at the end of Jan.
Well, thank God. I think in any normal year, we would have released the book at that stage.
Yeah.
Because it was COVID, we had a bit of extra time at home. And I think everyone listening right now, they probably did have some kind of COVID project because, man, it was one hell of an opportunity just to do those sort of things that you never would normally be able to do. And for us, it's probably taking that book, the original Evolution, through a few extra evolutions to be... We're thinking something we could be very proud of and somewhat perennial.
Yeah, I think this is version number 4 or 5 that we've done now. But We've been saying for a while that it's coming soon, but I guess we can say that we're at the end of this version, which is good. We've handed off to an editor. We've got some design work going, typesetting's happening in early 2021. So this time when we say it's coming soon, it is actually coming soon. So we're super excited for that one.
So a couple of quick announcements in a sense to make. First of all, with advertisements, previously we've done all baked in ads. We've had Blinkist, who's been an incredible supporter of us and something we've been really appreciative of. And then also 99 Designs for a bit. Been amazing.
Yeah, we got a website out of that, and the website has gone up 3x to 5x, I'd say, just in quality. Because before we did it ourselves, and each time we changed the website, it got worse. But now we've got a legit website to be proud of. Yeah,
and starting early next year, we're actually moving to a network of sorts. And this is essentially that because they've grouped so many podcasts together, they've got a full business development team in a sense compared to us, which is pretty hard as two indie podcasts to just sort all that. So we're really teaming up with them so we can focus more on the value add kind of stuff for the podcast as opposed to just purely the business development.
Yeah, exactly. We don't have to focus on that, so we can make better podcasts, better blog posts, better potentially social content. And then, once we finish this, write more books. I say more books because obviously we nearly finished this one and then on to the next. I guess a quick just for the most keen people. I've got our annual downloads. So 2016, 9,400. 2017 was 108,000. 2018 was 371,000. 2019 was 937,000. We didn't quite crack that mil. But then 2020, we're up to 1.8 mil so far, with a little bit of time left in 2020. I don't think we'll get to the 2 mil, but
let's just call it 2 mil.
We like to always add a bit of buffer. Let's say 1.85.
It's 2 mil. We made 2 mil downloads this year, mate. We must be proud.
Exactly. So we're obviously come a long way from 9,500 downloads in the first year to 1.85 or 2 mil, we can say.
Yeah, phenomenal. One hell of a ride, man. And is it time?
Yeah, let's get into what we normally do, which is our top 10s, starting with honorable mention. So this is the top 10s of 2020, but this is from July 1st onwards. So the best of season 5, you can get the first half of the year. This is the second half of the year best of.
My first honorable mention is The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. I think some listeners will be surprised that it wasn't you dropping this one, right? Because we've branded you as the Machiavellian dude throughout the years, but for some reason, after reading it, it wasn't up your alley as much as me. And it's funny because I've always been branded as the moral do-gooder.
Yeah.
And now I'm the one bringing up Machiavelli.
Well, I think the modern interpretation of it, I love. I think the crux of the book I'm still hooked on, but the actual book itself was an absolute slog to get through. Granted, it was written about 500 years ago, so it was written in the 1530s or something like that. So quite a tough read. I think if someone did a 2020 version of The Prince, it'd probably be my number one.
Yeah, I think it's something that really hammers something home that isn't very popular nowadays, and you got to kind of tap into a book that's so old, and that is like, being nice isn't necessarily being effective and always the most obvious route. One takeaway I really liked is one of the quotes where he says, "To have good laws, you must have good arms." And given the year that we've had going through coronavirus and lockdowns and everything like that, I think it was really interesting living in Victoria when we had Dan Andrews at the start saying, all right, everyone, you got to stay home in lockdown. There's no one go out, anything like that. And at one stage, everyone was just going out and didn't really give a shit. But as soon as the good arms came in and the serious fines, originally $1,500, rammed up to $5,000, everyone was way too scared to go out. Everyone complied by the rules. Everyone stayed home and played along. And you'd say that was a good part of his leadership to bring coronavirus back in check.
I like it. Machiavelli, 500 years later, still delivering the goods. One sort of honorable mention / shout out, we got Pablo Miller, is a radio host, Triple M in Western Australia. Once a week, we do like a 5-minute debrief of the book that we just did. So his favorite book of this half of the year was Loserthink by Scott Adams. Good book, good author. It was basically taking the best thinking concepts from 12 different professions. How does an economist think? How does a historian think? How does a designer think? And packaging that into, taking the best bits so everyone can learn to think better. From my perspective, I'd say the packaging sounds better than the actual book.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think he went the other way. He went, okay, what's a whole bunch of shit I want to say, and then how can I package it? If you had started with what's the package and then found the best content, I think it would have been better.
Absolutely. Okay, I've got another honorable mention here, The Art of Strategy. I think this is one of those books every now and then we come across, we read, and it's actually a pretty shit book. We do 3 or 4 back and forth, add a bit of our own juice to it. And then when we actually record, it's one of our better episodes. So sometimes our best episodes aren't necessarily the best books. And I think The Art of Strategy is one, because we got a bit excited with game theory and added a bit of our own fun examples, and it was a pretty good episode in the end.
Yeah, there's a lot of books, I must admit, that sometimes we do too good a job. It's almost like, well, if you like the sound of this book, we probably did it better than the actual book, just in the sense of the way we do it. I did a game theory subject at university, and this book, The Art of Strategy, just felt too much like that. It felt like a university course. It felt very academic, very dry. Game theory, sick. If there was like a modern version of a game theory book, I'd love it, but this book didn't get me going. Mate, my other honorable mention, I have to get this as an honorable mention, What the Dog Saw by Malcolm Gladwell. It's not in my top 10. There was probably 2/3 of the book that we didn't even cover in the episode, potentially more. It was a bit of a cash grab. He just whacked together all of his newspaper articles and sold it as a book. But I think I definitely worked out the Gladwellian storytelling style, the way he did it. Introduces a random story, brings in a second random story, gives you a bit of theory, gives you a new story, and then at the end sort of ties it all together. So I definitely enjoyed that aspect of it.
Yeah, I agree. He's got a serious, unique storytelling style, which doesn't have much kicker or any meaning or used to it.
I think you got to read between the lines. I think that's a problem. You just want to be handed it on a silver platter, but Gladwell just sort of likes to make you work a bit harder.
Maybe I reckon we should one day do the top 5 cash grab books or something like that.
Well, pretty much anything. Part 2, like any follow-up books. I'd say like Freakonomics went massive, and then they did Super Freakonomics. Yep. So pretty much anything that's like a follow-up book.
I'd throw What the Dog Saw in there.
Oh, big time.
Guess what else I'd throw in there?
Something we've done?
Yeah.
A cash grab book. Mark Manson, his second one? No. Cal Newport's third one?
Not even close.
Really?
You want to drop it?
Yeah.
Dare to Lead. Brené Brown, man. Yeah, Daring Greatly, she blatantly, we both absolutely love Daring Greatly.
Oh, yeah.
And then she just blatantly just dropped in like 20 pages, said, hey, this is very relevant to this book now, Daring Greatly.
But then also she had her other book, which was, what was the other one? Like The Art of Vulnerability or something. She basically took 2 books, merged them into one.
Oh, mate, she's killing it. So good on her.
She's probably one of the biggest authors out there at the moment, so we can't really talk.
Mate, at the start of this episode, we said before we get into it, because we've had a few drinks, we probably just like ramble on a bit when we've had a few drinks. And I think we've been good rambling, but
done heaps of rambling. 12 minutes in.
Game time, I think.
Time for the top 10.
I think we're loading up with your first.
So I think last season we had a lot of crossover, as in the best of season 4, we had a lot of crossover. And I'd say probably my top 7 of that was probably the strongest top 7 ever. And these, I think my top 1 would get inside that top 7. My number 2 would be in that 8 to 10 range, and then my 3 through 10 wouldn't be as strong. But that's just I guess how it rolled this time, because the first half of this year was so strong, and this time we've gone even further apart in that I think we've only got like 2 or 3 crossovers. So your number 10 is coming later in my list. My number 10, Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. It was all about pitching. Oren Klaff, he built himself as the master pitcher. He was the ultimate pitcher. Anyone who wants to make a big pitch, come to Oren, because he's the man.
It's one of those things that none of us put any of our attention and effort into learning, but loads of high leverage in terms of a skill putting into your skill stack, as Scott Adams would say. Because, some people, our default mode of pitching is just absolutely shit house. We'll put a slide deck together after a 1-hour meeting, and then we'll just bore people into sleep, and they don't want to have anything to do with this.
Yeah, the worst thing is you think of that slide deck where you've got size 8 font, where you've got the whole speech is written on that slide and you just read it out word for word. As you say, everyone's getting put to sleep. There's no energy in that. There's no tension in that. There's no feeling of, I want to get in on this.
Yeah, and compare that to 1953, you got James Watson, Francis Crick. They came up with a new discovery, which was the double helix DNA structure, the so-called secret of life. All they did is they put a 5-minute pitch together and they won the Nobel Prize.
Well, if you think about that, if they can explain the secret of life, DNA, this key discovery, one of the biggest discoveries of the 20th century, potentially ever, understanding what DNA is, and they could explain DNA in 5 minutes. And then you've got this brand new brand new revolutionary company, which is basically like Facebook 2.0, which you think is just this absolute revelation, but really it's just a carbon copy of something else, and you're spending a 1 hour or an hour and a half pitch going through every single element of it. You're losing that pitch.
100%, man. So number 9 for me, 10 for me coming later. So 9, Future is the Faster Than You Think. So by Peter Diamandis and Big Steve Kotler. Great book. They've got a great trilogy. I think we're going to get to Bold and Abundance soon, and Future is the Faster Than You Something along those lines. But I think we're in a very exciting time, right? Like 2020 now, the acceleration of technology, and they're all converging upon each other. And it's a really exciting time in history with all sorts of new things accelerating everything, which is like abundance of technology, abundance of geniuses, everything like that. And on top of that, you got the technologies. You got AI, robotics, virtual reality, 3D printing, material science, and nanotechnology, which they break down in very minute detail to really sell you on the idea that we are in a wild time right now, and it's an ultimate time to be somewhat of an entrepreneur who's like tapping into these innovations.
Yeah, I agree. I think this book for me was like very similar to Kevin Kelly's The Inevitable. And I think I preferred Kevin Kelly's. Kevin Kelly's was on like the 30-year time horizon. This is like on the 3 to 5 year time horizon. So we'll find out very quickly if these guys are right or if they're way off. And hopefully they're right, because they're super optimistic about what's to come, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that was your number 9. My number 9, which I honestly can't believe this isn't in your top 10. You had a very strong top 10.
Well, for me, my top 10 was extremely strong, and I kind of knew you'd drop this in there, so I kind of maneuvered my top 10 knowing that.
Good game theory. I should have put this as an honourable mention. Then what would you have done? You would have had to kick someone
any
else
other
out.
season, I wouldn't have done it, because we learned about game theory. I'll play the game, baby.
Well, my number 9 is probably one of your favourite authors, if that's okay to say, is Nassim Taleb, Fooled by Randomness. And obviously we've done The Black Swan, we've done Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, and now we've done Fooled by Randomness. I really like his idea about survivorship bias. It's something that everybody talks about in a whole bunch of other books, but it was good to go back to Nassim's version. And basically says if you put a bunch of monkeys in front of a typewriter, they tap away on the keyboard, and one of them pops out, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, that's a pretty incredible monkey. But what you got to think about is, well, how many monkeys were there to begin with? If there was 5 monkeys, that monkey is an absolute genius. If there were, 40 billion monkeys, then just by random chance, one of them would have accidentally got the right of the 26 characters in the right order to pop out Harry Potter. So you've got to look at that. How many people did you start off with? And how many of those actually ended up succeeding in the end?
Which is a phenomenal segue. Bring that into the real world example. Say if you've got, 10 million entrepreneurs, 9.99 million of them going to fail.
They're living back on their mum's couch eating 2-minute noodles.
Never hear about them. You just see them at the pub, and they're the biggest failure you'll ever meet. But that one so-called monkey, using that analogy, who types the Midnight Sonata on that typewriter, who gets super lucky, we start calling that's an absolute genius. And in this case, it could be an entrepreneur like your Steve Jobs, or as painful as I say, Elon Musk. But Elon Musk is all is known that. But yeah, this is what I was saying about the segue, mate, because number 8 for both of us is the man Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
And we've essentially got the person who's writing this narrative fallacy, which we were just critiquing.
Well, I must admit I had another part of game theory. Originally, Fooled by Randomness was number 8 and Steve Jobs was number 9. But I did a late switch, so both of our number 8s, the only time we sync up in this list is Steve Jobs. I must admit I was a bit surprised. I looked at this 600-page biography and I was not looking forward to it at all. But whether that was the subject, just because Steve Jobs is so interesting, whether it was the writer, because Walter Isaacson did a phenomenal job, but I really enjoyed this book. It was I was pretty captivated, I must admit.
Yeah, I feel like we were getting into a bit of the Steve Jobs brain, and I think if something was instilled on me during it, it was probably a bigger appreciation of design. This I've never really had in the past, because he was absolutely obsessed with design.
And simplicity as well.
And simplicity is something probably both of us have really sucked at. And I think the website we did this year, we used to have the opposite of the Steve Jobs effect. We both went down the path, right? Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, which is one of his quotes or some other dude's quote.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think Steve Jobs is a winner. I really enjoyed that.
So number 7 for me, one of those books that I really liked, but you obviously didn't like it all.
It wouldn't. Yeah, correct.
But anyway, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. So I think we both agree that a lot of the teams we work in, these
dysfunctional.
dysfunctions translate absolutely perfectly to all the dysfunctions we have and within teams. And it would be a huge asset, I guess, if everybody understood this and started with the bottom of the pyramid, which always begins with the absence of trust, which people have in teams. And then absence of trust, that manifests into fear of conflict. And if you've got fear of conflict, then you're not going to talk in a candid way to your colleague and tell them the truth and have this conversation where you're going to really be both in the search of the truth. You may be a bit more political, a bit scared of each other and actually not go after that.
Yeah, we had a good bit of conflict before we started recording. I don't know if we got to any actual resolution in the end.
I thought we did, mate.
Okay.
But we're always happy for that. I think people have started episode like how easily we speak about conflict, but I think we both see that as a real asset and understand that conflict is so bloody important because we've both been in jobs where everyone's just too scared of each other to tell the bloody truth.
Oh, big
that everyone's just happy with mediocre results because of that.
Yeah, big time. If you've got over your fear of conflict, the next dysfunction that comes is the lack of commitment. Obviously, people say, "Yeah, I'm aligned," but they never actually commit. The next dysfunction is the avoidance of accountability, and then the final dysfunction is an inattention to results. So I must admit, the 5 dysfunctions he absolutely bloody nailed. If this was a 1,000-word blog post, I would say he's absolutely nailed this one 100%. My criticism of the book was like the 200-page made-up fable that went along with it to explain it, which just did not get me going whatsoever.
Yeah, I totally disagree with that. I thought there's a lot of nuance when it comes to teamwork that can't be captured in the 2,000 words banger only. And there was just simple things in the story which could only be picked up in a story. It's like, I forget the names in the book, man, but Joey in the meeting, he looked away when the boss, Catherine, laid down the law. And I think that story element was really important to get this point across.
It just felt so cringy to me.
Yeah, it was cringe. I admit with the cringiness and wankiness.
Mate, you always hang shit on the Harry Potter effect. But mate, this was literally Harry Potter. It was fiction.
Yeah, it was fiction. We got a bit of a kicker.
Okay, anyway, my number 7, Jim Collins, Built to Last. Now, this book, I guess the book, it was written 25 years ago, and now the lessons from that book sound very, very obvious. So I'm not too sure if 25 years ago, if these were revolutionary or if they were obvious as they seem now. But I thought from that perspective, these lessons are pretty bang on. I guess similar to the dysfunctions. You said that dysfunctions are pretty bang on. I'd say these business lessons are pretty bang on.
Bang on. Extremely simple and very translatable to just your personal life. If you read any personal development books, I think the exact same principles apply to big, small, and medium business. Mate, I think we should come clean. I've had a few drinks, but we were trying to land Jim Collins for an interview, still pending. Hopefully the assistant's not listening now. But we added a bit of salt and pepper on our ratings on the website. Just said the book's better than an extra 2 or 3 ratings, and probably you've put in the top 10.
I think they're still betting us. Hang on, should we cut this out? Well, in all honesty, some of my favorites. I did love the analogy of the clock building versus the time telling. To tell the time once is good. But if you can build a clock, then obviously you can tell the time forever and ever. So it's really about that building that company as opposed to just having that one-off innovation. So I did like that analogy. And as you said, it applies to business, applies to a whole lot of things in life as well. But admittedly, a little bit of salt and pepper.
Anyway, if the assistant's listening, we absolutely love Jim Collins. We're absolutely in love with him. So yeah,
most definitely.
Get him on. Number 6, mate, Ordinary Men for me. Christopher Browning. Very, very interesting, probably the darkest book we've ever come across by some serious margin. And if you haven't listened yet, it comes at the height of the Second World War. You got the Germans there, big dog Hitler. I see big dog in the derogatory sense in this case. We sometimes use it the other way.
Thing, yeah.
But, he's got a war to the east. He's trying to fight England and later the US. He's also trying to fight Russia. He's also trying to do the final solution with the Jews within Europe. Huge scope, and the only way you could do it is not use the soldiers who are already people who are motivated killers. You needed to tap into your local populace. You sue the school teacher, Joey again.
Is that the same
butcher.
Joey from the 5 Dysfunctions? Or
yeah,
same
Joey. He's a butcher now, and he's also trying to do some rank
dysfunctional
shit.
member of the army.
But anyway, it just shows how they stepped from just being a normal person all the way down to the most brutal bullshit you'll ever come across. We haven't got a policeman here, right? He came up with some rationalization. Should I drop it?
Yeah.
It's not a good rationalization. But I think the way to read this book is to put yourself as if you're any human being who could take these same steps. Anyway, this bloke is a 35-year-old dude. He says, I made the effort to shoot only children. It so happened that the mother let the children by hand. So because the other bloke, the neighbor, shot the mother, then he shot the child just because he didn't want the child to be without a mother. So really dark shit. But obviously you don't read this for just the sake of the Harry Potter effect. You read it because you want to learn a bit about human nature and the lowest of lows that humans can stoop to. And then hopefully by learning about that through history, you can find ways where you don't need to go that low.
Well, it's easy to say, oh, that's just, they did that, but I could never do that. But the whole point of this book is that, well, really anyone could have done that. Put in that situation, all ordinary men and ordinary women from all walks of life all did those heinous acts. So it was looking at what are the types of things that get people to that point.
And I think like all of us, if you really look at our lives objectively, we all rationalize bullshit to some extent. If you're really honest with ourselves, like we're not perfect. We all do it. And a big one in this is career. Like a lot of people, once money's on the table, they will compromise on values, not realizing that they're doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's almost like, I think it was Annie Duke in Thinking in Bets. She said that like the smarter you are, the worse it is. So you might think, oh, I'm so smart, I would never drop to those levels. I'd never be shooting children in the middle of the war. But she actually said the smarter you are, the more you can find made up fucking bullshit rationalizations through the most
motivated reasoning.
Yeah. So my number 6 was The Defining Decade by Meg Jay. And I think...
Pretty irrelevant to me now, but still good for you.
As a 30-year-old, mate, you're out of the scope of this book. It was about your 20s, really. She then sort of reframed it to say, well, the defining decade is like your first 10 years out of university. So she got herself an extra few years, but really I think that was just a good marketing spiel. But I think it was not so much the advice, because the advice was quite standard, I guess, personal development, career sort of advice, a lot of shit that we'd heard before. But I think it was just the idea of like intentionality. She was talking about one story of a young lady who was working in a bar, but then she wanted to work in law. She'd hit 28. And so Meg was just saying, well, okay, so if you want to work in law, so it's going to be like 4 or 5 years at uni plus another couple of years studying to get to the bar. So that puts you at 35. Well, she said, well, I also want to have kids. So, well, if you take a year off or 2 years off to have kids, that adds an extra couple of years. So you're basically 37 and you're at an entry-level job. So it was just sort of like all these things. The timelines just didn't add up. And I think the main takeaway from me was just thinking, long-term. At the moment, it seems, you're too busy for all the serious stuff. We can put that off to the future. But thinking that you're going to be less busy later is ridiculous. Like now we think we're busy, but in another 5 years, we're going to have a more serious job or more serious commitments. It's sort of like the older you get, the busier you get. So you may as well pull the trigger now and start doing some real world shit.
Absolutely, man. And that was a pretty good spiel you did. But I was waiting for something because we've both got the notes right now in front of us. At the very bottom, I'm reading right now. I haven't read this
Hang on, what's this?
Note for AA, bus throw of AJ for season 3 and season 4. Like,
where did you copy this from?
I don't know.
That was from the notes. I didn't put this in. You brought this back in.
Okay, so that was from the original episode. Do you remember?
Oh, definitely.
What
definitely.
was it about? Just
okay, so I think we said it in the episode. So basically, your season 3, you read The Black Swan.
Okay,
and then you like Serendipity, and then you read Anti-Fragile, and you talked about tinkering and optionality. So for me, it was like I read this book, and it was going to be intentionality. So for about 4 episodes in a row, I was talking about intentionality.
Well, you're still on the intentionality spiels, which is
good.
Yeah,
mate. Well, I think you do have to get intentional. I think the point of the book for me wasn't to think about how do you get a good career and how do you get a good relationship, blah blah blah. It was more about just intentionally. How do you plan this shit? How do you actually take it seriously, not just put it off for the future?
Yeah. Number 5 for me is The Selfish Gene. I'd say this and probably Steve Jobs is the most effort. Probably.
Man,
actually, now my brain goes thinking fast and slow. Was
Man, let me go back one step just to drop this on you.
Okay.
I was going to drop it over the burger, but I thought, maybe I'll save it for the episode. Mate, I think we had this conversation. It could have been end of. I remember we went to. It was South Bank, and we had a TGI Fridays ridiculous burger. Was it an end of year? It could have been end of year, an end of season or something. Anyway, mate, we talked about, we've both been with your girlfriends for a while. When are we going to start to get serious? Mate, that time could be coming soon. It could be ring time very, very soon. And the good news is she doesn't listen to the podcast, so she won't know. So anyway, I thought I'd drop that in as part of the defining decade spiel, as part of the fuck. It could be ring time soon.
For Alison.
Yeah.
Oh, phenomenal,
Could be
mate.
time. So anyway, that was I thought I'd drop that in before we move on to, and then we can move on to Selfish Gene.
Well, that's exciting. Are you going to drop it now? Are you going to just like say this is going to be the big thing in this episode?
Oh well, no,
That's fucking insane.
I'm not going to drop it now.
Cheers. That's some big shit.
But I won't say, hey, listen to our best of episode and
Mate,
listen
that's
to
at
40
least
minutes of
opening
drunk
this
shit.
episode. Or
No.
you brought it up as if it's just like a fucking nothing.
It's just a little throwaway.
Dude, that's fucking insane.
Anyway, anyway, the first half of 2021 could be a bit busy, but yeah. So
Jesus Christ. I'm sure
coming
she's
around
got
the
some
corner.
friends who's going to listen to this. You better fucking... You had a week to just get on that knee, man.
No, I think hopefully that should be all right. We're what 30 odd drunk minutes into a best of episode. She's not listening to this.
Jesus Christ, man. How do I get onto this next one? That's a big deal. All right, anyway.
Anyway, let's move on. Selfish Gene.
All right, selfish shit. Anyway, this was one of the most effort I've put into an episode, mainly because I think Richard Dawkins it's a beast of a book, very, very difficult to distill into a 1 hour episode we had, and then almost impossible to distill into this now.
Into a one paragraph spiel, yeah.
But his literary skill, struggling with that word at the moment, but to actually talk about how things evolved in evolution. I think we've all got a basic understanding of what evolution is. He does take you from that 4 out of 10 level to a 7 out of 10 level. When he talks about the replicator and how things out of nothing, given billions of years time, certain attributes do stay around, right? And in this case, it was longevity, speed of replication, accuracy of replication, and just for the sake of just putting a whole bunch of shit into just one paragraph, which no one's going to get without reading the book. But memes, man, I think memes. I think
Just fucking memes.
I think that's gone to like season 1 level of explaining concepts, right? Just memes, man, just memes. But those is like a metaphor to explain as a marketing analogy, right? Like, I think if you just land back on those 3 attributes, longevity, speed of replication, and accuracy of how you repeat it, can be explained as a really powerful marketing thing.
I really liked how he did, man, how much more complicated can you get than evolution? It was pretty complicated, but then he broke it down into like these metaphors. He was talking about something, I forget it exactly, but there's the whole library of possibilities, and then you pick one book, and out of that one book, it boiled down to one page, and then it's like the genes of that one page is one single word on that one page. It's like he had this ultimate metaphor of describing evolution in such a relatable, easy to understand way.
Okay, that's my number 5, man. Let's move to your number 5.
Mate, my number 5 was The First 20 Hours by Josh Kaufman. And now the book was like, the first 30 pages was how to pick up a new skill, and then the next 200 pages was just like his personal stories of skills that he'd picked up. But I liked it. He had, again, this is probably one where we did a better job. He had like 10 steps to learning a new skill, plus then 20 additional steps to getting better at it. And we just boiled it down to our own 5 steps, which I think was a pretty good 5 steps. So basically, if you want to learn anything, 1, choose a lovable project. 2, define success, set a goal before you begin. 3, research and plan the best way to get there. 4, eliminate barriers. 5, practice. Obviously, that was like, a 10-second version of the 25-minute episode of the 200-page book. But I think learning skills is pretty important.
Absolutely. Oh, mate, I've just had the best realization ever. Yeah. It's approaching the end of the year. I always write my goals for the next year toward the end of the year. There's a few skills I want to learn. For some reason, I thought it was the first 40 hours. And I wrote in my goal setting, right, do 40 hours of this.
Hey, you just saved yourself 20 hours.
I saved myself 20 hours. I don't have to do 40 hours.
You just have to do 20.
Anyway,
mate, what are your skills? What are your skills you're going to learn?
Well, there's 2 actually. One's quite similar to what you've done. I'd say as a structural engineer, if there was one skill that's got 10% of learning this has 90% leverage, it's actually drawing. Engineering drawing, sketches of structural design, architect.
Well, just to communicate ideas simply. Yeah,
architects absolutely froth about it. A lot of engineers will spend a lot of time doing fancy math behind the scenes that no one sees. But if you can get a developer in the room or an architect and you're trying to sell them an idea,
they don't give a fuck about the numbers.
They don't. And you can just sketch it in front of them.
Oh,
That's exactly
That's
their
a good
reaction. Oh. So that's one.
Mate, have you read The Back of the Napkin by Dan Rome?
No, but
I think
this,
check that out.
I think I might get that. That's number one skill. The other one's actually grasshopper. So we were talking about this dinner earlier, but you know, like I've dropped this before. Like in construction, you do every design once, but sooner or later it's gonna be like you design a car. You design the car once, and then you just roll that out a million times, and using algorithms to do design as well. So grasshopper, very basic shit.
What's grasshopper?
Oh yeah, keep dropping grasshopper as if everyone's meant to know it. But you're designing the algorithm to design the building as opposed to design the building.
Oof.
So then you hand
nice.
that design to an architect. Architect changes the pitch by 3 degrees of the roof or something.
Mm-hmm.
All computations flow through. No costly variations. 3 weeks later, it's done on the spot. But I think that's where the future's going in that. So yeah, it's two skills I think that got highest leverage that to add to the skill stack that
I like that.
add a bit of scarcity.
And you've just gone from 2 times 40 to 2 times 20, so you've actually saved yourself 40 hours.
Yeah, mate, it's just a week.
Phenomenal. Yeah, I think the framework you gave was pretty solid. Just the point is that, okay, when you start anything new, you're going to be shit house. There's no avoiding that. When you first start to play the violin, it sounds like a cat drowning. And when you first start to draw, it looks like a 3-year-old's drawing it. But basically that frustration barrier of being really shit at something is pretty much 20 hours. If you can put in 20 solid hours really quickly to get to the point where you're actually decent at it, it starts to get easier after that. So I think that's just even that idea, just put in 20 hours is a good idea.
Yeah, it's an easy sell, man. Okay, number 4 for me again. We're going for...
No, 5 was... first 20 hours of me.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
5 was you. Yeah, Lost Connections for me. Quite an interesting book. Was this anywhere in yours?
Not in my top 10, and it's good shit. My criticism was like it's very standard self-help, personal development stuff. You know, get a good job, have good friends, work hard, build your status. Just in a different wrapper, but it was good. It was a good wrapper, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I think the wrapper is really important because, which is very common now. You're feeling upset, anxiety, depressed. Always we preface with this stuff. We're saying, look, we're not psychologists. We know jack shit about antidepressants and stuff like that. But I think the default setting in our society is that the solution is an antidepressant. And this does give you a different story. Like, look, you know, that's one option. But before you go that and you're paying Big Pharma all your money for the rest of your life, just have a look at some of these natural antidepressants. Like, they are some kind of pretty basic personal development shit. But there's a lot of research behind it to say, right, this is actually something that's going to remove your depression as opposed to the other stuff.
Now, I was just listening to an episode of the Jordan Harbinger show before this, so there's a free plug for Jordan. And it was about dodgy science, and it was about, it started, you know, the tobacco industry funded all these studies to say tobacco isn't bad for you, and then they all moved on to I think it was Johnson & Johnson, one of the built to last companies, that this baby powder that had some dodgy asbestos-like material in it that was screwing up a lot of kids. They just had to get 2 scientists to come and say, oh no, these studies aren't relevant, and they presented the other idea, and just that little bit of uncertainty was all it needed. So I think basically it's like this: Big Pharma, they've got a couple of scientists, they've spun up the story, and the story is there's this dodgy brain chemistry, and the solution to this story is buy our pills. And so just that idea alone is like, that's one perspective. And for a lot of people, it really does help. But this book broke down some of the more statistics behind it and just an alternative approach. So it's almost like, hey, if you're going to go down that path, maybe that might be the solution for you. Before you try that, maybe try this instead.
Man, I might just quickly rule out the 9 because I think they're important. Number 1, disconnection from meaningful work, disconnection from others. So, you know, having good friends, disconnection from meaningful values. If you're out there just to go and buy the latest shit rather than have intrinsic values, then that's going to cause depression. Disconnection from status, childhood trauma, disconnection from nature. So going out in nature, climbing the trees, hanging out with the trees and climbing the trees. That doesn't make any sense. 7, disconnection from secure and hopeful future. 8, genes. So there is some genetic factor, but it's not the only story. And number 9, changes in the brain. We've got neuroplasticity. Everything can change. And I think if you add a bit of stoicism in there, if we just add a number 10, obstacle is the way. Changing your perception of, so this is not them, this is me on the fly.
Yeah.
But I think you'd agree though.
Oh, definitely.
Changing your perception of what a problem is in your life as an absolute opportunity as opposed to being something that's going to take you out, helps as well.
And then the peek behind the curtain is that was part of our fight before. Was I wanted to do too many Stoicism books in the next 6 months.
Yeah.
Mate, I'll also give that a shout out to Kay Ashton, my mum. I called her this afternoon and said, hey, we're recording our best of. What was your favorite? Because I think the first 2.5 years she didn't listen to us, but once we started getting downloads, she jumped on the bandwagon. She's listened to every episode since. But she said her favorite was Lost Connections, just because it was, some good life advice in this nice package. That hey, everything's pretty tough, and that it seems like there's the only solution is to go the big pharma route. But this just offers a different perspective. So there we go. Okay, so that was your number 4, Lost Connections by Johann Hari. My number 4 is Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. And this was the first marketing book we did specifically about services. And the research is that about 81% of people work in service companies, and there's not really a whole lot of books that are about marketing services. And of course, that other 19 to 20% of people who work in product companies, they're sort of shifting towards services. If you buy a car, you're also buying the maintenance service ongoing. If you're buying a coffee or a beer, you're also buying the customer service and the friendly chats that come with it. So pretty much everyone's in services.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And I think like when you talk about marketing, everyone just assumes it's always about product marketing. And this, it puts you down the other end of the spectrum saying, look, you think it's a product, but it's services. And a lot of it just gives you really interesting strategies with service marketing, things like costing, how to price yourself, or using anchoring and different heuristics and biases to help you out.
I think the biggest one was that when you're selling a service, you're not really selling that service, because whatever that service is, if it's a lawyer fighting a case or an accountant doing a tax return or a marketer doing a marketing campaign, whatever that is, the service is one part that the customer knows absolutely nothing about. So their only proxy for buying off you is the relationship that comes with it. And I think we probably fell into this a little bit as well. We said at the top about the book, we've hired an editor, we've hired a designer, we've hired a typesetter. All of these are services that we got absolutely stuff all idea about. And I guess we picked the person that had the best relationship, the one that sounded the best, which I think is it makes sense. Yeah. So basically, if you're trying to sell a service, improve your relationships.
Yeah, it is. In a sense, it's unfortunate. The risk was, you'd hope it would be like the most confident person, but it's just the one you just kind of get along with, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And like, especially when you're an accountant or whatever you might be doing, you think becoming the most technically proficient person is the only thing that matters and all that matters. And I probably was brought up on that idea. But then really, when you look at it, all it comes down to is sometimes just going to the pub on the Friday, having a few beers with the potential client, and if you just get along with them, they're probably going to hire you. Compared to if you're extremely good at what you do and you're a bit of a weirdo to them, creep them out a bit, they're not going to go with you.
Exactly. So I thought there was a winner. It was about 20 years old, that book, but I think it's still relevant, potentially more relevant today than it was 20 years ago.
Number 3 for me was Being Mortal, and something that I think I said at the time as well. It's like extremely relevant to every single person at some stage. And the second part is pretty relevant because it's not important at all for pretty much everyone their whole entire life, but it will be important at some stage because everyone obviously dies. And we've covered that in different ways with Stoicism and everything like that. But this goes from a different angle. It's like, how do you actually handle those last moments? Because at the very end, right, it's if you've got people who love you, your default setting is, right, I'm going to fight for everything just so my kids, my partner, my family, I don't want to have someone dead. But sometimes that is irrational, and sometimes actually admitting defeat is the best thing to do, which actually has a less likelihood of depression for all your family. It also ironically means you're going to live longer because you're not doing unnecessary surgery. So I think having that in the back of your mind, if either of me or you, hopefully we don't have to, or anyone we love comes to this moment, at least you're prepared with this other interpretation about how to handle these moments.
Yeah. It's an interesting one because obviously, I think most people, you want to keep fighting. You want to squeeze out every last moment you can, and take, that the surgery that's got a 10% failure, but there's a 90% chance that it could work out and things could get better. Is that worth it? If it goes the other way, what if there's a 90% chance of failure, but there's a 10% chance you live for another 10 years? What's the upside and what's the downside? Should you keep fighting? Should you throw in the towel? I think it'd be so tough to pick. at that time. I guess one person is my I'm super lucky. All 4 grandparents still alive. One grandfather who 20 years ago came down to the hospital, was diagnosed with blood cancer, and said, "Hey, you got 6 months to live." 20 years later, he's still kicking. But so it's sort of like, well, should he have thrown in the towel at that time and just copped the 6 months? Should he have kept fighting? Should he give up now? Should he have given up halfway through? I don't know how you'd ever possibly choose, but I think reading a book like this gives you a good insight of both sides, not just fight forever, but gives you the other option as well.
Well, there probably is intervention bias a thing?
Yeah, we can make it a thing, yeah.
Well, let's make it a thing. There's 2 choices, doing something or doing nothing. In those instances, we always just resort to doing something when actually just doing nothing and write it out could be a better option.
Yeah, definitely. There was actually, we got a message from a listener in Sydney called Zoe. She was asking us about this intervention bias. This could have been the one. I'll message her after this and say, listen to Being Mortal. She was talking about, soccer goalies that they always want to take some kind of action. You want to jump to the left or jump to the right. You don't want to be the idiot who just stands in the middle and misses the ball entirely. And you always want to do something. So I guess that's a good metaphor for you. Want to have that one extra surgery or take that one extra injection to try to get yourself through.
Now, number 3, man, Humankind by Rutger Bregman. Thanks to Owen and
Wade.
Wade, yeah.
Yeah.
Wade, yeah.
That was a good recommendation.
Very good recommendations.
Owen Fitzpatrick. We'd just done, obviously, Laws of Human Nature is one of our favourites, and Influence is one of our favourites, and they play on these ideas of the Philip Zimbardo studies and the Stanley Milgram studies. And then we went through that dark realm of books about collapse, about the collapse of civilizations, about the selfish gene, about being selfish, about ordinary men, how ordinary people can just do this wild shit.
And The Prince.
Which is just all about dogging this dark period.
Well, we kicked the season off with a very dark...
very dark stretch.
3 out of the first 8 were those 3 dark books.
Yeah.
And I think it must have been going through a pretty dark period because I chose all those books. And I think we caught up with Owen from Ireland. What's his podcast called again? Changing Minds. Great podcast. Just to give him a shout out because he's a superstar. Check out his TED Talk.
Oh, right? One of the best TED Talks
One of the best TED Talks you'll ever see.
Purple cow, big time.
Absolutely. But anyway, we caught up with him and he said... Come on, guys. Humankind.
Balance it out
a bit. And we did.
Which is good.
And we're so happy.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, Rutger Bregman, he literally called out the books like The Prince and Collapse and all these books that said, hey, that's just one side. He poked a few holes in their argument. He also then tore to shreds the Zimbardo study, how it was basically a hoax. He tore to shreds the Stanley Milgram study where basically no one believed it. He tore to shreds the Kitty Genovese murder, which is that one we've talked about, how middle of New York, 37, 38 people. They heard her screams for help and nobody helped her. We didn't cover that in the app, but basically there was a whole bunch of reasons as to why those 38 people didn't help. And really, when you boil it down, if you get rid of those couple of big studies, it actually looks okay for humans. We're actually pretty good. Deep down, most people want to help each other.
Yeah, with all the other books and those studies, let's just say you've got 2 planets on the table. You're the first planet in planet A, and say if there's a big plane going down and crashing and how everybody reacts. On this planet, everyone just turns to their neighbours, asks if they're okay. Those who need assistance, you help them out. You let other people to the front of the plane first. Compared to planet B, where everyone is left to just fend for themselves, there's a mad rush to the exit. If there's a little kid there sitting, trying to just like crawl his way because he's a 3-year-old to the exit, you don't give a shit about him.
Just stomp on the head on the
way out. You just jump out, you steal his parachute, and you just get the fuck out of there. Everyone thinks we're on the first. Everyone thinks, we're on the second planet, right?
That's it.
But I think reality really says we're on the planet A. Like, if you look at the headlines of coronavirus, all around the world, it just showed the people stealing toilet paper from grandmas and
Correct.
Pushing everyone out of the way. And which, yes, there was like 2% of the population doing that stuff, but at the end of the day, most people were pretty good about it. They did the social distancing. They put the masks on. Most of the time, it wasn't for themselves. It was actually for other people and getting a team effort.
Exactly. So that was a good balancer. Just to say that we've read all these books about how fucked up humans are and how dark we can all be, and when times get tough, we start to just turn on each other and do whatever we can to get ahead. This was just a good balancer to say, actually, no, when times get tough, it sometimes brings out the best in us. So that was just a nice little positive spin on that.
Number 2 now, and it's your one, Ashto, here. We got Tiny Habits by Big BJ.
Yeah, Big BJ Fogg. So we'd read Mini Habits, Atomic Habits, The Power of Habit. Mate, I thought we were all habited out, but I really like Tiny Habits, potentially one of the best of the lot. And all those other books we talked about, especially Mini Habits and Atomic Habits, borrowed the studies and research from BJ Fogg and took his model. So the Fogg behavior model is saying that any behavior boils down to three factors: motivation, ability, and prompt. So basically, if you want to do something and you're able to do something and you're prompted to do something, you're probably going to do it. And then if there's any behavior that you want to do but don't do, one of those three things is missing. Either you didn't really want to do it, it was too hard to do, or there was no trigger to prompt you to do it.
Yeah, and it's very simple. Whenever you want to do something, I think first of all, being conscious of what you're trying to do, whatever behavior you're trying to get into, and that's probably like linked to goal setting and stuff like that. But after that, scroll through motivation, ability, and prompt. Can you give us an example on the fly?
Yeah, of course. Of course I can. Yeah, okay, so let's say...
no more booze.
Let's say... okay, so no more... What? Hang on, so you don't want to drink alcohol? Or you don't want to drink alcohol and you end up drinking alcohol?
Losing weight. Okay,
well, let's say losing weight. Okay, so to lose weight, you want to go for a run. Okay, so go for a run. The motivation there is, have you got some reason driving it? Do you want to just lose weight for the sake of losing weight? Or have you got some goal in mind? Do you want to lose weight? The personal example is my brother's getting married in about a month, so there's probably a bit of motivation to lose weight to look good in a suit on that day, or maybe whatever your motivation to lose weight is. If you've got some kind of motivation, that's going to help you go for a run more. Ability, have you got the right shoes? Have you got the right clothes? How far can you run? Have you trained up to be able to run safely and not injure yourself? Is the ability. And then, of course, the prompt is what triggers you to think it's time to go for a run. If you're just waiting for your brain to tell you to go for a run, it's probably never going to. If you set an alarm, or if you say that every time after you eat breakfast, you're going to go for a run, whatever that prompt is, it's going to motivate you to go. It's going to prompt you to go for that run.
I think that is a very good segue, mate, to number one for me. My book of the season, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. Because for me, it changed the biggest behavior, a huge change in behavior for me. I put in this similar category of people who've been listening for a while. Alan Carr, His Way to Stop Smoking. Knocked smoking out of the park for me. After that was alcohol for a good period of time. This goes in the same category.
Obviously, just after tonight, probably we can't claim that anymore.
Bit of a hypocrite on nights like tonight. But look at that. Behavior equals motivation, ability, and prompt. This took my ability level from a 1 out of 10 probably to a 10 out of 10. Once you learn how an actual strategy about how to tidy up, the behavior of actually tidying becomes super easy. You actually spend less time tidying and a lot less brainwaves in doing it. It's very hard to go through the whole KonMari method, but quite simply, if you go through every single item in your house, from the sock to the pen to the extension cord, whatever, if single thing's got a spot and you consciously give it a spot in your whole entire house, and you got the packaging methods that she does, every time there's shit just lying around everywhere and you know where it goes, you just pick it up and put it where it goes. Easy. Previously, man, like I just have shit lying around and it just stay lying around because I didn't know where it goes. And my house was a bit of a mess.
Well, if you're looking through that Fogg behavior model, the MAP, as you said, that ability, learning actually how to tidy, took your ability from a 1 to a 9 or a 10, whatever you said. That normally tidying is just something that everybody just assumes you know how to do, but really we don't really learn how to tidy anything better than a 3-year-old knows how to tidy. When the mum and dad says, hey, put your toys away, that's pretty much the extent of our ability to tidy. I guess just to drop in this, it's just one of those, I guess, the shit that they never taught you, yeah? It's just, one of those things that nobody ever taught you how to do it.
Well, that's... I don't think we've dropped the title there.
We did a sneaky little one in Steve-O's... The episode with Steve Levesky, we mentioned it as the same sort of subtle.
Well, I think for both of us, like after we're reading books, like this whole bunch of shit. We're trying to work out a title was, and I think we just said. Well, I said to my mates, like, the fucking shit they never taught you, like that shit where you wish when you're 23 that they had it said to you, and you had to read a book at 29 to realise. He goes, mate, is that your title? Like, oh,
I guess it works.
that's perfect.
Too good. But yeah, that's one of those things. Absolutely. So, mate, my number one, which was your number two, my number one by quite a stretch was The Dip by Seth Godin. I must admit, we did this all the way back in season one. It's probably like episode 15 or 20 or something. I was a little bit scared to read this book again just because I thought maybe back in the day it was just so much better than it actually was, but I was very glad that it definitely held up these 4 or 5 years later. The Dip by Seth Godin, 80-page book, really gives you some serious nuggets of gold in those 80 pages.
Yeah, extremely simple and effective framework. Like after you read this book, who were we speaking to the other day is like, this is the dip or something, or this is the depth they're choosing. And when someone's read the book and used that verb, there's a whole book behind that sentence and it makes a whole lot of sense because it comes down to like knowing what to choose or your project selection, which I think is one of the hardest things to do by an absolute mile is like choosing a side hustle or your day job or anything like that, whether to stick with it or to quit with it.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
This will help you with that.
I had someone message as well on LinkedIn just saying, how do I pick, I want to do a podcast, I want to write a blog, I want to start an app, I want to do all these things. How do I pick which one to do? And the easiest thing is just say, hey, buy this book and read it because it makes a hell of a lot of sense. Basically, if you can, you've got the cul-de-sac, which is just flat forever, the dead-end job that you work and nothing extra happens. You've got the cliff, which is basically you think you're on the right track, but all of a sudden it just drops off and goes down to zero. Or you've got the dip, where at first there's a couple of easy wins. You start a podcast, you do your first episode, someone downloads it. There's all these wins at the start, but then there's that long slog where you make an episode every single week and nobody's listening and nothing's getting better, and it feels like it's shithouse. But then at the very end, hey, you've made 200 episodes of a podcast and a whole bunch of people start listening and you start to get the rewards of being one of the very few people that made it past the podcast graveyard of doing 10 episodes and giving up. So but realizing that dip is ahead of you, realizing that any project you take, you're going to go through a lot of shit, a lot of slogging where you're working and no rewards are coming. But at the very end, it might pay off.
Yeah, a book to really assist you in the dip is the War of Art by Stephen Pressfield, I think.
Good combo.
Very good combo.
That's the shit they never taught you, mate.
That's
the
it.
dip followed by the War of Art.
We're linking for our book there. But yeah, exactly. Because once you get through the dip, you get the benefits of scarcity. Worst thing you can do is just keep choosing dips and quitting in the middle of the dip, which I think we've both done pre-podcast, right?
So.
And this podcast had every risk of being us doing 100 episodes and then quitting. But now we're 250 episodes in.
Man, I think you're underselling this.
How many episodes have we done?
Maybe 310. Hang on, let me...
No, shit.
Yeah, somewhere around there. 310,
anyway, 310. And, we're getting the benefits of scarcity now. Like, we've dropped a few things to start. We're finishing our book, got other things happening right now. And it's, the project would have had any benefits if it wasn't for pushing through a dip.
Yeah, and I think probably part of that was just the two people. I think, I guess both of us have probably had times along the journey where we thought, far out, this is too hard. We're working hard, nothing's happening, let's give up. But the good news is that it never happened both at the same time. Both of us never wanted to quit at the same time. If one of us wanted to quit, the other one was still pretty keen, and vice versa. So I think it was good that we both had each other pushing us through, and now it's sort of like, well, there's no looking back. We're already through the dip, or at least towards the second half of the dip, so we may as well keep pushing through.
100%, man. So we've done our top 10s. You know what that means?
What does that mean? What's coming next? Teaser for Jan?
No. Mate, who's that fucking bloke? In Bali. I actually don't remember.
Mate, we can't. I don't know if I can say this. Mate, this was one.
Just temper down the language. Did we do anything wrong, or was it the dude?
No, it was 100% the dude.
All right, well, then it wasn't us.
Far out.
Mate,
okay,
I don't
so
even remember.
this was we'd gone to Bali. We'd 6 months in. We'd thought, oh, far out. We've had 8,000 podcast downloads. We're kings. Let's go to Bali and celebrate.
Oh, I think I remember now.
We went to this dodgy motel. The Funky Monkey was what? Like fucking $12, $8 a night or something each.
Well,
and it was,
mate, we're first year grads.
there was, 3 bunks in this dorm. I think I lost my shoes there, so I lost more than the value of the room. Well, what was your memory? What are you thinking? Are you thinking of the other bloke?
We're trying to do like an episode of some bloke in the room or some shit.
Well, there was, the worst, that was one. There was a guy having a shower during the episode, but the worst, mate, we might have to cut this, but there was a dude, you woke up 3 a.m., there was a dude having a wank and
you
also
serious? I don't
multiple knuckles deep into his own butthole and then made eye contact with you and smiled. Do we have to delete that?
Are you fucking serious?
You told me the next day. And then we thought, okay, well, it's time to go from Bali to Lombok. Mate, that's 100% legit. That was a weird dude. He was from Perth as well, and so shout out to anyone in Perth.
Jesus
but that seems like
Christ.
the type of thing that you guys do. Okay, should we move on to teasers for
Let's
Jan?
move on. I shouldn't have fucking drawn that out.
Okay, that might be an offliner. Anyway, so teasers for Jan. So obviously, Jan, exactly 12 months ago, last time we put you on the spot and said, what do we call Jan? We've got July is Juggernaut month. Jan is, what do we call it? And he said launch month. So this will be our second launch month. So this is, I guess, things that are personally relevant, very specific types of things that you can do to set you off on the right track, to launch you into 2021.
Yeah, that's it, man. Like 2020, interesting year for everybody. 21, we're going to show you that, the best books to really launch you back into the good shit.
So we're going to kick it off with an author we've never done before, John C. Maxwell, The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So leadership, I guess, is something everybody aspires to, but it's also something everybody's capable of. Leadership isn't a title. It's not you're handed, someone tells you to be a leader. You just choose to be a leader.
Another book we're going to do, I think it's been recommended by a lot of people, right? Like The Courage to Be Disliked by, I forget the name, Ishiro
Couple of
someone.
Japanese people.
Couple of
Yeah.
Japanese people. Great authors. I actually read the book.
Yeah.
Slow start,
I've
but
only
it really ties together to be probably a very good book.
I think it's been the most recommended we've had for a long time. The last 6 months, we've had multiple emails from people saying, check out The Courage to Be Disliked. So it's time to check it out. We're also doing a couple of very specific, tangible areas in which you can improve your life. So one is The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. So how do you lose weight, build muscle, get fitter? There's a section on improving your sex life. I don't know if we'll cover that or not. But it's a very simple way to improve your body.
Yeah, I loaded up on that for 3 weeks.
For 3 weeks and then the other one is the Total Money Makeover, so improving your personal finances. What are the types of things that you can do to set you off on the right track in 2021? And then finishing her off with The Art of the Start, most likely. Actually, that last one might change, but we'll work that out. Guy Kawasaki, one of the big dogs at Apple, talking about how can you start a business or how can you start anything, really.
So that's it. Very exciting year for 2021. Loads of shit happening on What You Will Learn. Super excited. I've got my books ready, really, for the first half of the season. That's what we're wrestling about. My center of gravity is in one direction. Your center of gravity is in that direction. Full arm wrestled for a long time, but I think what we landed on was the diversity between both of our center of gravities it's a good one, I think.
Too good. But yeah, there's a hell of a lot of stuff happening in 2021, especially the first half of 2021. Some awesome apps. As we said, as we've been saying for the last 11 months, the book's coming soon, but this time the book is actually coming soon. So super exciting. Thanks to everybody who's been coming along for the ride so far, and looking forward to an even bigger and better 2021.